Today I interviewed Clare Pickard, career and leadership coach from Relaunch Me. I wanted to share Clare's story with you as she's had a really interesting journey, starting off in marketing and events, moving into agency recruitment, an internal career development role, learning and development, and now career coaching. I hope you enjoy her story. Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I am your host, Leah Lambert, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. How are you?
Well, thank you, Leah. How are you today?
Well, I am well. Given the current situation, I'm trying to be as positive as I can, although I'm very concerned about a lot of people out there and who are losing their jobs, and I think it's going to be a really tricky time, but I think we just need to focus on what we can control and keep pushing on. Claire, you and I met about 12 months ago or longer.
Longer.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you joined Relaunch Me, because not only are you an amazing coach, I also love working with you and you are a wonderful person. But I would love you to give our listeners a little bit of background into what you did before you came to work for Relaunch Me. And, you know, I know you've had a couple of different career moves as well. Finding out about, you know, how you transitioned from one to the other and what you learnt about yourself along the way.
Sure. So I actually, after completing a Bachelor of Business in Marketing and Human Resources, although I had a love for HR more so, circumstances at the time were that there were, when I finished university, a number of marketing roles where I was living at the time, which was actually down on the Mornington Peninsula. So I was working part-time at a boutique winery, and I was organising events and functions and selling wine. And I ended up being their sales and marketing person as my first job out of uni. So I was responsible for, you know, developing content for newsletters and the communications that went out to clients, as well as organising functions and events and weddings and so forth at the winery. So it was sort of my first forte into a marketing type role. I then moved into more of the conference and events. I worked for a resort conference centre down on the peninsula. It was actually the RACV Club, I think, or is now known as at Cape Shank, where I moved into more of a conference-related sort of sales and more event-focused corporate events and conferencing type role. Mm-hmm. So that's where I really developed my skills around planning and organising, working with clients from a corporate perspective. But I really had a desire to move back to Melbourne. And in moving back to Melbourne, thought that one way to transfer my skills was to stay within the hotel industry. So I started working for Accor Hotels, and I again was working in their events and conferencing team.
Can I just ask you a question about that time?
Sure.
So both when you were at what is now called the RSCV, which was then
the Cape Shank Resort, I think, and conference facility, golf course.
So when you're at the Cape Shank Resort and of course, so most of your clients were corporates, is that right?
That's right. Most of my clients were corporate. So they would come for residential conferences.
Okay. And so I guess what I'm interested in, because I talk to people who are interested in events and conferences all the time. And I guess one of the things that I think you need to think about when you're looking at a career in events is that there is often a requirement to work after hours. So whether that is weekends or before or after work. So a lot of events obviously are not when we're at work. Was that the case for you when working in corporate, or not so much?
It was less so working in corporate than it was, at the hotel, where I was kind of organising weddings and sometimes events that were sort of dinners and presentations at night. So the corporate conferencing aspect certainly was done during the day. And then if they had separate events, then you would be required to be there. So, I mean, I think that was one of the reasons why I decided to move out of events.
Yeah, okay, because it does, I do find that often it is sort of almost a bit of a young person's game where, younger people who don't have family commitments are prepared to put in those hours outside of normal office hours, where
Absolutely.
as they get older, they start to sometimes move away from that industry for that reason.
And whilst the event is on, you really are the contact person, the client liaison, and if anything's going wrong, you need to then feed that back to the relevant department or the relevant, solve the problem essentially if there is an issue.
And do things go wrong very often?
There were little things that went wrong, but it's about, managing client expectations really, and making sure that, everything runs smoothly. So there could be technical issues, there could be issues with food, little things, but you just need to be there to be able to fix them on the night or during the day. So lots of running around, a very hands-on role.
And so then from Accor, was that when you moved into recruitment straight after your time with Accor?
Yeah, so I developed, or I went to speak to my manager about the idea of being a little bit more sales focused at the hotel, and looking at ways that we could generate business for corporate conferencing. So I developed a role myself, which was really an on-the-road account management role. So I would go out to businesses and manage our existing clients, but also generate new business for the hotel, for the conference centre, essentially. I didn't really enjoy that a lot, and the part I didn't enjoy was establishing the new business, so lots of cold calling and less about managing existing clients and more focus on generating new business. So I was very good at the relationship building and the account management and negotiation and identifying clients' needs, and but not so great at working alone. I missed working with a team. I was on the road most of the day, and although I was seeing clients, I didn't have a huge amount of interaction with people.
And so what did you do from there? Was that when you moved into working with a recruitment agency?
Yes. So I transferred. I had always had a passion for HR. I wanted to move into HR. And at this time, I was probably in my mid-20s or even late 20s. So transitioning into an entry-level HR role was going to be extremely competitive, because I would have been competing with HR graduates who had recently joined the profession or were trying to move into the profession. And whilst I had transferable skills in sales, I thought that was a good stepping stone into HR, moving into recruitment. So as a lot of people I know who've been in recruitment, I went to see Hayes about an HR position and ended up being their sales and marketing recruitment consultant.
Yes, actually, we've got a role. How would you like to?
Yeah. So that was fantastic. That was a great time. Initially, I was career skills and really matching or identifying, I suppose, the right talent for clients and matching them with the right candidates. So I loved the relationship building. I loved all the people contact. I loved the fast pace, energy that goes along with working in a kind of sales environment, because that's essentially what agency recruitment is all about.
And they're fun places to work, aren't they? Like
really fun.
I guess you are in an office with mostly extroverts who love to chat and party, and it's a really fun place to work, I found. And it's like
really
when I look
fun
back on my employment, and I still tell my ex-boss who I worked for in recruitment for 6 years that I still think, you know, so fondly of that time. And
yes,
so I'm still in touch with a lot of the recruiters I work for, because you know, we really just felt like we were working with our best friends, and we
absolutely
wanted to hang out together every Friday night.
Yeah.
And after go to the gym on, you know, after, so, you know, it is a really, they are pretty upbeat, energetic places to work.
Yes, yeah, and very focused on social and coming together, celebrating achievements, you know, working together as a team. So there were aspects of it that I absolutely loved. What I didn't love about it, and what I found difficult, was the cold calling and the generation of new business. The sales and marketing team was a new area to Hayes, a specialty area. So we needed to leverage business from our existing clients, which was difficult. It was it was a challenging market to be part of, and a lot of my role was about generation of new business and achieving KPIs. So whilst I enjoyed all the other aspects of it, that was probably one aspect that I didn't love, and I ended up feeling really burnt out. I got to a point where I was just exhausted. The long hours were really tough. Yeah, I'd sort of had enough fun, I think.
Yeah, I think, I think recruitment is difficult when you are in either an unknown agency or an agency that's not well established. And it's interesting that, you know, because I had exactly the same experience. I loved the candidate side, but I totally procrastinated over any cold calling.
Yes.
And I think I pretty much got away with not cold calling for about 6 years. But I could see the future, that if I did want to continue in recruitment and potentially one day have my own business, that
absolutely
I would have to learn to sell. So look, I pretty much left for the same reasons as you. And as you and I have discussed, I think often it's around your personality, that, you know, we are people that we're both helpers.
Yes.
So we love to build relationships. We like, we want people to like us. Where, I think sometimes in sales it helps to be, much more focused on results and targets. They still have to build relationships, but they're not hesitating when they pick up the phone thinking, oh, maybe I'm being a pest, which is pretty much how I always felt whenever I did cold calling.
Yes. I think I remember our targets for cold calls each week were 30 new calls each week. Okay. So when you break that down, that's quite a number every day, along with doing all the other bits. So along with attracting the right candidates, at that point we were, we needed to meet every candidate, not just kind of talk to them on the phone. Video chat wasn't necessarily a big thing. It was more about face-to-face, meeting with candidates face-to-face, and then, everything from writing advertisements, briefing with clients. So, yeah, it was a very busy, fast-paced role, but I loved it in the beginning.
And so then what did you do after that?
So then I still had this desire to be in learning and development. I was really wanting to move out of a role where I was selling and in sales. And so I decided but I loved recruitment. So I decided to move and I made the transition into internal recruitment for Hudson, but I was on site at Census. So that role really focused on working with the business, working with hiring managers. I had my own stakeholder group that I was responsible for looking after. So as well as the candidate management and the recruitment and selection of the right candidates for the business, I was very focused on understanding and identifying the needs of those business sectors and those teams from the perspective of not only skills and competencies, but attributes and behaviours and values. So really concentrating on selecting the right people for the organisation.
And did you still have KPIs in that role?
I did. It was still based on metrics. So, time to fill, the amount of time that a role was vacant, how many candidates you interviewed. So it was still numbers focused and still KPI focused.
But
no cold calling, which I loved. Lots of relationship building and lots of really deep connecting with people in the business and stakeholders, hiring managers. I was working in a big team. It was lots of knowledge sharing and lots of ideas generated.
And did learning and development sit, like I know in some organisations learning and development sits within HR and sometimes it sort of sits beside HR. How did learning and development fit into their org structure?
So Census had a learning and career team. And in fact, when you were part of the on-site team at Hudson, you were treated like an internal employee. So we were able and allowed to apply for internal roles at Census. I applied for a role in the career development team with Census and was successful. So again, a massive career change. Very different moving out of recruitment into learning and development, and particularly with a focus on career development. At the time, I didn't realise career development and career management is certainly a specialist area. And there was a lot of knowledge and expertise that my manager at the time, who was fantastic at mentoring and coaching me, a lot of insight and knowledge that I gained in that role around how managers can more effectively or can help their teams manage and develop their career.
Yeah, which is so important. And a lot of organisations don't invest in that internally. So, I think people are lucky if they do work for an organisation that is focused on internal career development.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were extremely lucky. We were one of the only corporate organisations who had a dedicated career development team. So we were, I was responsible for helping people plan and manage and develop their careers internally, which was just unheard of, because often there's the thought that if you encourage people to plan and develop their careers and develop their skills, then you're essentially
suggesting they leave.
To move. Exactly, move out of the business. But it wasn't the case.
Yeah,
it wasn't the case.
More likely to retain people if you
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that was their focus. So I ran workshops. I worked internally with hiring managers and not hiring managers, but team managers and people within the business to understand and identify ways they could develop their team. So having better, understanding how to have better career conversations with their team members, understanding how they could develop particular skills. I developed and facilitated career development workshops around, resumes and identifying your strengths and interviewing skills. And I remember one particular workshop which got lots and lots of people involved across the business was what do I want to be when I grow up? Because a lot of people didn't understand what they wanted to do. They were at the sort of mid stages of their career or early stages of their career, and they had no idea what they really wanted to do.
Yep.
Still.
People we see nearly every day. And, you know,
Exactly.
a lot of people, as you know, that we work with, they've fallen into a career accidentally and just ended up progressing and never really had the opportunity to hit pause and think about what they really want to do and, you know, the types of areas that they really want to focus in.
So that was my first role where I was really focusing on ways that people could develop themselves. And I had a particular interest and had, you know, since university, it turns out, you're interested in the way that adults learn and develop skills and knowledge, but more specifically how that can affect people's motivation and engagement at work, and how that linked to the impact on positively on an organisation's culture and employee engagement. Yes, so then I continued my career in learning and development. It was at that point actually that I was made redundant.
Oh, okay.
So Census had a large change in restructure. Telstra decided to amalgamate, Telstra, who owned Census, decided to amalgamate a lot of their corporate services. So there were over 350 of us that were made redundant. I also, at that time, had left to start a family. So I was on maternity leave. So it was kind of a good time to, take stock and step back a little bit. And then I returned to the workforce in a learning and development manager role within a corporate law firm.
Okay, and so then you stayed there for, was it about 5 years? I think you were there for quite a long time before you...
Yes, 6 years.
Relaunch Me.
Yeah. So...
and so what sort of work were you doing within the L&D function with the law firm?
So I was responsible for all of the training and professional development, and really my role was looking at the organisational and business objectives and how that then related to learning and development objectives. So I needed to look at, or I developed strategy. So, for instance, one of the objectives was to grow new leadership within the business or within the firm, and I needed to look at ways to do that. So developing programs, looking at initiatives, identifying specific competency and skills and knowledge within the organisation, and how to develop individual and teams' capability within certain areas. I was responsible for leadership development and developing leadership development programs. So I did a lot of work with consultants and brought in external facilitators and expertise to deliver the training. I also ran and facilitated workshops on various different...
Yeah, I mean, it's such a broad role, isn't it? Like, I think when I have spoken to clients about this area in the past, there's often sort of just a view that it's just organising training and booking meeting rooms and, and I think possibly, I guess, at more junior levels, I guess, supporting a learning and development consultant or a manager, and that, it might be a bit more administrative, but, what you've told us, it shows that there's such breadth in that role, that you can be running workshops, you can be doing one-on-one coaching, you can be writing training programs. And, I think a lot of people don't see that don't understand the breadth that is behind that role.
Yes, huge scope and huge variety. And I loved the variety in that role. I was... any one day would be extremely different to the next, depending on what was happening.
And Claire, in your experience, I know that often people go into this area do have completed some HR study, and often a certificate for in training and assessment, which is the adult education qualification.
Yes.
What would you say about the qualifications to get into this area?
Look, I think you definitely need some formal qualification. At a management level, you absolutely, at a minimum, need to have an HR degree, business degree in, human resources or organisational development, learning and development, in any of the sort of general or specialist areas of HR.
So a Cert 4 in training and assessment might help you get your foot in the door.
Yes.
But to be sort of in that management role, you feel that you would definitely need to have done further study.
Absolutely. Further study. The certificate or Cert 4 in workplace training and assessment can sometimes allow you to work within the training space. But again, it would be really an entry-level role, depending on your transferable skills and depending on the areas that you've worked before. Perhaps a training coordinator position or a learning and development coordinator position, because it really gives you a sense of adult learning frameworks and how adults learn, and an understanding of how to identify learning needs and analyse learning needs, and then perhaps develop some ideas and thinking and ways of, developing people's skills and knowledge and competency.
What were the parts that you felt energised you most and that came really naturally to you versus perhaps some of the parts that you just didn't find as enjoyable?
So I loved the one-on-one coaching. I did a lot of personal development and leadership development coaching with people in the organisation, and I loved helping them to understand their strengths and identify areas where they could develop and ways of developing themselves, both in their work and outside of their work. I enjoyed helping people understand more about themselves and essentially become more engaged and motivated in the work that they did, feeling more confident about what they could bring to their role.
So that work that you were doing is very similar to how you help people in coaching it at Relaunch Me as well, isn't it? In terms of, it's about helping people understand what they want, how they can get it, but a lot of it's also involves mindset and building confidence so that people
absolutely
in themselves and what go out to the market, that they can really, talk about their strengths and what they can offer.
Exactly. Helping them realise their potential, discovering more about themselves, and ultimately helping them and supporting them to make changes that significantly impact their life and their happiness.
That's right. Well, it's all very interconnected, isn't it? Work and career and life.
Absolutely.
And if we spend so much time at work, if we're not happy, then, it's very rare that people have a fulfilling life if there's, that big chunk of time at work that is not fulfilling or meaningful. Well, Claire, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been fun. You're doing amazing work both with clients at our Malvern and our Essendon office and via Zoom now that we can't meet people in person. So I want to thank you for all the amazing work you've done for the past 15 months. Can't wait to continue to work with you this year. Thank you for sharing your story and for giving us some insights into the world of marketing, recruitment, learning, development and coaching. So it's been wonderful.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks so much for your time. I really am enjoying working with the Relaunch Me team, and I look forward to being part of more podcasts.
Yay. Okay. Well, have a great afternoon and we'll chat soon. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Leah.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.